Welcome to Compact History from compacthistories.com, where we explore the stories, events, and moments that shape the world. In short, bite-sized episodes. This is episode 108, The History of Nuclear Power. The story of nuclear power begins not in power plants or political debates, but in the laboratories of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It was during this period that scientists began to unravel the mysteries of the atom, the tiny building block of matter that would eventually become the key to one of the most powerful energy sources known to humanity. The journey began with the discovery of radioactivity in 1896 by French physicist Henri Becquerel. While investigating phosphorescent materials, he stumbled upon the fact that certain substances, like uranium salts, could emit radiation without exposure to sunlight. This discovery defied existing scientific understanding and prompted further exploration. Soon after, Marie and Pierre Curie expanded on Becquerel's findings by isolating new radioactive elements, polonium and radium, and coining the term radioactivity. Their groundbreaking work laid the foundation for future investigations into atomic structure and behavior. By the early 20th century, the idea that atoms could be split or transformed was no longer theoretical. In 1911, Ernest Rutherford proposed a new model of the atom, revealing a dense, positively charged nucleus surrounded by electrons. His famous gold foil experiment demonstrated that atoms were mostly empty space, a revelation that helped scientists conceptualize how energy might be released from within. The breakthrough came in 1938, when German scientists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann conducted experiments that resulted in the splitting of uranium atoms, a process known as nuclear fission. This discovery was interpreted and explained by physicist Lise Meitner and her nephew Otto Frisch, who realized that splitting an atom released an immense amount of energy, far greater than any known chemical reaction. The concept of a self-sustaining chain reaction, where the fission of one atom could trigger the fission of others, soon followed, setting the stage for nuclear power generation. While much of this early work was theoretical or confined to small-scale laboratory experiments, the scientific groundwork was clear. The atom held extraordinary potential. Whether that potential would be used to generate power or to build weapons was a question that would soon dominate global affairs. But even in its infancy, nuclear science had opened the door to a new era, one in which energy could be harnessed not from combustion or movement, but from the very fabric of matter itself. The race to harness the power of the atom escalated dramatically during the Second World War. What had begun as a scientific curiosity quickly became a matter of national security, as nations feared that their enemies might exploit nuclear fission for devastating purposes. Nowhere was this urgency more palpable than in the United States, where a secret military initiative known as the Manhattan Project was established in 1942. Led by General Leslie Groves and physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, the Manhattan Project brought together many of the brightest scientific minds of the era, including Enrico Fermi, Niels Bohr, and Richard Feynman. Their goal to develop a functional atomic bomb before Nazi Germany could do the same. The project operated in extreme secrecy across multiple sites, including Los Alamos in New Mexico, Oak Ridge in Tennessee, and Hanford in Washington state. The scientific and engineering challenges were immense. The team had to master uranium enrichment and plutonium production, design mechanisms for initiating and controlling fission reactions, and ensure the bomb would detonate as intended. In 1942, Fermi successfully achieved the world's first controlled nuclear chain reaction under the stands of a football stadium at the University of Chicago. It was a landmark moment in both science and military history. By July 1945, the Manhattan Project had produced two types of atomic bombs, one using uranium and an implosion device using plutonium. The first successful test, codenamed Trinity, used the plutonium type, with the device itself referred to as the gadget. The test took place in the New Mexico desert and unleashed a blinding flash of light, followed by a powerful shockwave. Oppenheimer's famous reflection, quoting the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," captured the gravity of what had been created. Just weeks later, the United States dropped the two bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, one of each type, killing over 100,000 people and bringing about the end of World War II. The world had entered the nuclear age, but it had done so not through peaceful progress, but through destruction on an unimaginable scale. The legacy of the Manhattan Project was twofold. It had demonstrated the terrifying, destructive power of nuclear energy, and it had shown that fission could be harnessed on a large scale. Though the initial use was military, scientists and governments soon turned their attention to civilian applications. Could the same force that flattened cities also light them? In the aftermath of the Second World War, nuclear energy stood at a crossroads. The atomic bomb had revealed its destructive potential, but scientists and policymakers were eager to demonstrate that the atom could also be used for peaceful purposes. Out of this desire emerged the concept of civilian nuclear power, electricity generated not by burning fuel, but by carefully controlling nuclear fission. The first steps toward nuclear electricity came in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Experimental reactors were built to explore how nuclear reactions could be sustained safely over long periods. In 1951, a small experimental reactor in Idaho produced the first electricity generated from nuclear power, lighting just 4 light bulbs. Though modest, it proved the principle worked. A significant milestone followed in 1954 when the Soviet Union connected the world's first nuclear power station to an electrical grid at Obninsk. While the plant produced relatively little power, it symbolized the dawn of a new energy era. Other nations quickly followed. In 1956, the United Kingdom opened Calder Hall, the first commercial-scale nuclear power station, supplying electricity to homes while also producing plutonium for defense purposes. The United States nuclear power program expanded rapidly during the 1960s and 1970s, building dozens of nuclear plants across the country. Pressurized water reactors and boiling water reactors became the dominant designs, valued for their efficiency and scalability. Governments promoted atomic energy as a solution to growing electricity demand, energy security concerns, and dependence on fossil fuels. The oil crisis of the 1970s further accelerated this expansion. As oil prices surged and supply chains proved fragile, nuclear power appeared to offer stability and independence. Countries such as France embraced nuclear energy wholeheartedly. By the late 20th century, France generated the majority of its electricity from nuclear reactors, a strategy that shaped its energy policy for decades. International organizations also played a role. The creation of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, in 1957 aimed to promote peaceful nuclear use while preventing the spread of nuclear weapons. This dual mission reflected the delicate balance between opportunity and risk that defined nuclear power's rise. By the end of the 20th century, nuclear energy had become a cornerstone of electricity generation in many industrialized nations. Dozens of countries operated nuclear reactors, and hundreds more were planned or under construction. Yet even as nuclear power expanded, concerns about safety, waste disposal, and long-term environmental impact were beginning to emerge, issues that would soon reshape public opinion and policy worldwide. Despite the promises of clean, efficient energy, nuclear power has long carried a shadow, one shaped not just by atomic weapons, but by high-profile disasters that shook public confidence and altered the course of nuclear development globally. These events, though relatively rare, left a profound psychological impact and continue to influence policy debates today. The first major wake-up call came in 1979 with the 3 Mile Island incident in Pennsylvania, USA. A partial meltdown at the plant's Unit 2 reactor, caused by a combination of mechanical failures and operator error, resulted in the release of a small amount of radioactive gas. No one was killed, and the health effects were minimal, but the incident exposed weaknesses in safety protocols and communication. The media coverage, fueled by public misunderstanding and Cold War fears, led to widespread concern. In the United States, new reactor construction slowed dramatically, and public support plummeted. Just 7 years later, in 1986, the Chernobyl disaster in the Soviet Union delivered a far more catastrophic blow. During a late-night safety test, Reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded, sending radioactive material across Europe. The flawed reactor design, compounded by operator errors and a lack of a containment structure, created the worst nuclear power accident in history. Entire towns were evacuated, and a 30-kilometer exclusion zone remains in place today. Estimates of the long-term health effects vary, but thousands of cases of thyroid cancer have been linked to the disaster. For many, Chernobyl became a symbol of the dangers of nuclear energy, igniting anti-nuclear movements across the world and halting expansion in several countries. The Fukushima Daiichi disaster in 2011 brought these fears into the 21st century. Triggered by a massive earthquake and tsunami, the plant lost power to its cooling systems, resulting in core meltdowns in 3 reactors. Although modern reactor designs and emergency responses reduced the spread of radiation, the images of hydrogen explosions and evacuations reignited global anxiety. In the aftermath, Germany announced plans to phase out nuclear power entirely, and Japan temporarily shut down all its reactors for safety reviews. These disasters did more than expose technical vulnerabilities. They changed the narrative. Nuclear power, once seen as a futuristic marvel, came to be viewed by many as inherently dangerous. Safety improvements followed, including enhanced reactor designs, better training, and more stringent international regulations, but public perception remained fragile. While some nations pressed ahead with nuclear development, others froze or reversed course, reshaping the global energy landscape for decades to come. As the 21st century unfolded, the world found itself facing a complex energy dilemma: how to meet growing global demand while reducing carbon emissions and combating climate change. Amidst this challenge, nuclear power experienced a cautious resurgence, reframed not as a futuristic gamble, but as a potential climate solution. Although public perception remained mixed, and disasters like Fukushima continued to cast long shadows, the conversation around nuclear power began to evolve. Nations such as France, which had long relied on nuclear energy for the majority of its electricity, continued to invest in the sector. Others, like the United Kingdom, began to re-evaluate nuclear's role in their energy mix, particularly as they aimed to phase out coal and reduce dependence on fossil fuels. Countries like China and India, with rapidly expanding populations and energy demands, emerged as major players in nuclear development. By 2020, China had over 50 operational reactors and many more under construction, with plans to become a world leader in nuclear energy production. At the heart of the 21st century nuclear push is the argument that nuclear power produces virtually zero greenhouse gas emissions once operational, making it a valuable tool for achieving climate targets. Unlike solar or wind, It's not dependent on weather conditions and can provide a constant, stable supply of electricity, the elusive baseload power that renewable sources sometimes struggle to match. As countries strive to decarbonize their energy grids, this reliability gives nuclear energy a compelling advantage. Technological innovation has also played a significant role in revitalizing nuclear energy. The development of small modular reactors, SMRs, represents a significant shift in design philosophy. These compact, factory-built reactors are designed to be safer, cheaper, and faster to deploy than traditional large-scale plants. Several companies, including Rolls-Royce in the UK and NewScale in the US, have spearheaded SMR development, with backing from governments keen to modernize infrastructure while boosting energy security. Further still, research into next-generation reactors, including thorium-based systems and Generation 4 designs, promises improved safety, efficiency, and waste reduction. While many of these remain in the prototype stage, they reflect a broader desire to innovate beyond the limitations of mid-20th century reactor technology. However, challenges persist. High upfront costs, regulatory hurdles, long construction timelines, and unresolved issues around nuclear waste disposal continue to hamper expansion. Political opposition, often rooted in historical distrust, remains strong in parts of Europe and beyond. Even so, as the climate crisis intensifies and pressure mounts to shift away from fossil fuels, nuclear power has re-entered the spotlight, not as a silver bullet, but as a controversial yet potentially essential part of the world's low-carbon future. The future of nuclear power sits at the crossroads of innovation, policy, public perception, and global urgency. As nations confront the twin pressures of accelerating climate change and soaring energy demands, the role of nuclear energy is being reconsidered, not as an obsolete relic of the Cold War, but as a potentially vital component of a sustainable energy mix. One of the most promising developments shaping this future is the aforementioned emergence of SMRs. These compact, scalable systems are designed to overcome the historical barriers of traditional nuclear plants, such as cost, size, and construction time. SMRs can be manufactured off-site and transported to their destination, significantly reducing construction risks and delays. They also offer flexible deployment, ideal for remote locations, smaller grids, or industrial applications. Several SMR projects are now in advanced stages, with the first commercial units expected to come online before the end of the decade. The UK, USA, and Canada are all investing heavily in SMR technology as part of their long-term energy strategies. Alongside SMRs, research into next-generation reactor designs, often referred to as Generation 4 reactors, is gaining momentum. These include molten salt reactors, gas-cooled fast reactors, and lead-cooled systems, many of which promise better fuel efficiency, reduced waste, and even the potential to consume existing nuclear waste as fuel. Some experimental designs aim to use thorium instead of uranium, which is more abundant and poses a lower proliferation risk. Though still years away from commercial viability, these innovations represent bold steps towards safer, cleaner nuclear technology. Another frontier is nuclear fusion, which, if achieved at scale, could revolutionize energy production entirely. Unlike fission, which splits atoms, fusion combines them, mimicking the processes that power the sun. It produces no long-lived radioactive waste and carries minimal risk of meltdown. Breakthroughs like the 2022 experiment at the US National Ignition Facility, which achieved net energy gain for the first time, have re-energized optimism. However, commercial fusion reactors remain likely decades away. International collaboration will be crucial in this next phase. Climate targets such as net zero by 2050 cannot realistically be achieved without large-scale decarbonization of electricity, heating, and industry. For many countries, nuclear will be a necessary partner to renewables in achieving those goals. Public acceptance, however, remains the wild card. Education, transparency, and trust will be essential to securing nuclear power's place in the future. The disasters of the past still echo loudly in public consciousness, and any misstep could stall progress. Still, the trajectory is clear. Nuclear power, once seen as a sunset technology, is now being reimagined. In a world desperate for clean, reliable energy, the atom may once again prove itself a powerful ally. That brings us to the end of this episode of Compact History, part of the Compact Histories network. If you enjoyed it, please follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss any future episodes, and consider leaving a rating or review, as it really helps new listeners find the show. You can find more episodes at compacthistory.com, where you can also explore our other podcasts covering biographies, warfare, disasters, mysteries, and true crime. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. Finally, please consider supporting the show directly by buying us a coffee. Head on over to compacthistories.com/historycoffee to see how. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.